March Madness is finally here, but did BYU and the Big 12 get hosed? Welcome to Saturday's Warrior. I'm Trevor, and this is the channel where we talk all things BYU, Big 12, and we even do a lot of conference realignment on here. But today, we are focused on March Madness and whether BYU and the Big 12 are justified in having complaints against the selection committee and how things shook out for them. So let's start with BYU. Overall, this is a BYU channel, but also because this is the most glaring kind of slight that happened out of all the seeding, at least in my mind, and I think it's been pretty widely acknowledged that BYU coming in as the 17th overall seed throughout all of the teams, so that should have been the number one of the 5 seeded teams, got pushed down to a 6 seed. And we know that this is because of BYU's commitment to not playing on Sundays and the committee accommodating that. And now this is something that I've known, and I can't remember specifically which year, but I think probably every year, it seems like BYU often gets knocked down because when they have to adjust the seeding. I mean, it's in their right to move BYU up, and they could have with BYU at the top of the 5, could have found a way to move them up to a 4 seed, but that seemed really unlikely. It seemed like it was within BYU's power. If they could have hung in there and closed the deal against Iowa State in the regular season, that might have been the difference, and BYU could have been a 4 seed. Maybe they'd have Kansas's spot, but they didn't. BYU was in control of that, and also BYU is the one making the request. So I think it's normal. I think we usually accept that means that BYU often gets knocked down, maybe a seed from where we would expect them to be in order to make those accommodations. So that's not a surprise to me, so people shouldn't get too up in arms. It is frustrating. What's surprising to me, and I don't know this answer, so if you know, please let me know in the comments, is when did they learn which days each matchup is going to play? Because I've heard that none of the 5 seeds, even so, there's 3 5 seeds playing on Friday, Sunday in this first weekend, and only 1 on Thursday, Saturday. But that matchup in the next weekend would be a Friday, Sunday, and so BYU couldn't be slated into that 5 seed. And so, okay, that's fine, I guess. But I don't know when those dates are set. And if that's the case, then why did everybody expect BYU to be a 5 seed this whole time, unless they came up with those dates during the selection committee? And in which case, why did they not, adjust? I don't know. I don't suggest that they should readjust all the scheduling of all the locations just for BYU. I'm just saying I don't know at what point those dates were set. So if those were already set, then we should have seen that coming and known that BYU could not end up as a 5 seed. Having said that, everyone's talked about, and it's well documented, that BYU's opponent, Duquesne, is one of the lowest rated 11 seeds, definitely in this year, but even comparing to other years. And so that whether the committee was doing BYU a solid to try to make it a little bit easier on them or not, I don't know. But that is one of the theories. But it is what it is. And Mark Pope is saying all the right things, saying, BYU is just excited to be there. They're preparing and they're taking every opponent seriously. And hopefully they do. They go in and don't get surprised. We all love a Cinderella story, and Duquesne certainly would be one, not having been to the big dance in, I think it was since the 70s, and their coach is about to retire. But you know what? Duquesne's done so much already. I think that they can be proud, and I'd much rather see BYU move on. And obviously winning at least one game, I think is pretty much the expectation for BYU fans. But if BYU can make it back to the Sweet 16 this year, that would be humongous and really the feather in the cap for BYU on what has been an outstanding year and really quite surprising. But obviously we have hopes that BYU can go even further. With the way that they play, they're certainly in any game and could certainly shock anybody. But also, I think they are susceptible to being shocked. But they showed during the regular season that they can take care of. I don't like using this word because it's a little degrading, but inferior competition, and so really this first game, hopefully BYU takes care of business, and then we can move on to the next one. Now let's go through the rest of the Big 12 teams real quick. I don't think there's anything shocking. So Houston is number 1 seed, no surprise there. Iowa State had a case to sneak in as a number 1 seed at the end, especially the way they handled Houston, so they could have a gripe there. They actually were seeded as the last of the number 2 seeds, so they are in that tough bracket and will ultimately, if UConn keeps winning out and Iowa State, they'll have to go through UConn, the number 1 seed overall, to do it. But the way they just took on Houston fearlessly suggests to me that there is a chance. Baylor is a number 3 seed. I think that was to be expected. And actually, their route to get there does not look too bad. I mean, I think they have a path. The only team seated higher than them, the 2 seed Arizona on their side, has flamed out in recent years. So I don't know if we can count on that happening again, but you got to feel like Baylor's got to like their odds there. Kansas as a 4 seed. In some ways, they were lucky to hold on to that. And really, even though they're susceptible from lack of depth, we know, if everybody's healthy and they're back and they're able to play, I know Samford is going to be a popular upset pick there, but so is McNeese going against Gonzaga. And so I think Kansas kind of has a path for it. And then ultimately, if they keep winning, will likely be playing Purdue. And we know Purdue also has that reputation of flaming out. So Kansas also has a path to get there. Texas Tech, we would have liked to see them perhaps as a 5 seed. Would have been nice to have BYU replaced with Tech instead of Gonzaga, which is a dagger. But Tech also has a path ahead of them. They have a tougher first-round matchup against a hot NC State, and all you can hope is that the Wolfpack are tired out and exhausted and maybe a little dinged up after that long run of, I think, 5 games straight to win their conference title. But hey, they got in and they did what they had to. We'll talk more about that later. And then 7 and TCU, it's, again, they're seated, I think, about where people expected. TCU, some thought maybe an 8, but ultimately that does not matter, 8 or 9. So regardless, that's pretty good. I think the complaint there is also that Oklahoma, I think a lot of us thought that Oklahoma would be in. And that perhaps some of these other teams in the Big 12, Cincy, who made a late push and a small run in the Big 12 tournament, and then also who am I forgetting? Oh, K-State. We thought that they might have a chance, but once all these other teams started sneaking in, winning their teams that were not going to be in the big dance, that won their conference tournaments, that they got in, and you knew that fewer teams, those teams on the bubble were going to get bumped. And so that is a bummer. It is sad. Not that I feel bad for OU because they're going to the SEC, but as a Big 12 fan, knowing that we get paid based on how many teams and how many games, each round they win is going to be more and more of a payout to the conference. So certainly want to see that. Also, in terms of branding, the fact that the Big 12 and the SEC had the same number of teams into the conference is a bit of a bummer. We really pride ourselves as being the best basketball conference and feel like we got even deeper this year with the additions of the new schools, headlined by obviously Houston, but then also surprisingly BYU, and then the other two have also had pretty decent showings this year and show that they're on an upward trajectory. But that brings me to the point. It's a branding thing. So you got to be rooting against SEC and Big Ten while you're at schools, certainly. But be rooting for Big 12 schools if you are a fan of a Big 12 school, and see them succeed. Yes, for the payout, but also for the branding and the perception. We want to hold on to that, and also root for Arizona and Colorado to make it happen. And then hopefully that perception of being the best league, and really gives the Big 12 something to hang our hat on, because we know that we're falling behind. But when it comes to basketball, that we really got to own that and root against SEC, Big 10, all those. So anyway, that brings me to all the conferences and schools that are saying, hey, we need to expand the tournament, make it even bigger. There's more money. There's schools that are getting left out. That's headlined by Sankey, which I wish he'd shut his mouth on this, because I just think that's wrong. I think the tournament is perfect. I was not a proponent of adding those play-in games to make it 68. I'd love it just to be 64. But, I mean, we don't even usually pick those 4 games on our brackets anyway. So, I would much rather just have this field of 64 and say, you know what, that needs to be determined all season long, and teams have a chance to play their way in. And then if that's not enough, you have a chance, just like NC State, just like Duquesne, just like these other schools who have surprisingly gone in and won their conference championship. So there is a path for teams to get in, and I love that, because that pushes the intensity to the regular season of every game being a must-win. And these makes these conference championship games even more exciting. Whereas in the Big 12, it really wasn't, because once we had all the upper seeds left in the conference championship, these teams were all already into March Madness, so we weren't really worried about that, and it doesn't look like any of that impacted seeding. So really, that was less exciting. But even in the ACC, they got an extra bid because of NC State's push there, and so I think it's perfect as is. I do not want to see any more expansion, and so that brings me back to my original question: do BYU and the Big 12 are they justified in their complaints? And I think BYU probably the most, but also not really, because you're asking for special considerations, and that is how it shook out. And you know what? That's fine. BYU is going to go in there and do their best, and hopefully they show out. And as well as the others, it's a bummer. There are teams that are deserving that won't get in, but that's always the case. You have to draw the line somewhere. And so it's a bummer. I would have liked to have seen it play out differently. You could always say, well, this or that, but I think by far and large, the seedings came basically how we expected. And at this point, teams just need to show up and win their games, and hopefully Big 12 does well. I think to save face, having 8, we'd really like to have more teams last longer than the SEC, but also I feel like you got 8 in there, you really got to have 2 in the Final Four, and it would be great to have someone in the championship, and especially winning it all would certainly help a lot to help the Big 12 maintain its perception as the top basketball league. Anyway, so that is where I come down on it. What do you think? Did BYU and the Big 12, or any of the schools specifically within the Big 12, get a raw deal, or is this basically just how it works every year? You're happy with it? Let me know either way in the comments, and let me know if you think the tournament should expand. I do not, but I'm open to hearing your opinion, so let me know in the comments. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and as always,